Morning, this is Talking Devils, your favourite Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Ruben Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good, thank you very much, Wayne.
Good stuff. People watching this, listening to this, wondering where's Dave? There's an episode of The Simpsons, Dave. Paul, I'm going to presume you're not well versed in Simpsons humour, but there's an episode of The Simpsons where they create an extra character for the Itchy and Scratchy show. They call it Poochie, and it's voiced by Homer. He gets the job as Homer, and he goes down terribly. Nobody likes the dog. And then Homer goes into the creative sessions to sort of give ideas. He says, "Well, whenever Poochie's not on screen, people should say, 'Where's Poochie?' So when people are watching the podcast and Dave's not around, say, Where's Dave?" Although he did get that last week, I will tell you where Dave is. Dave is knocking around Paul's old playing grounds in the Far East. He's gone over to work in. He was in the other day by himself in Disneyland Hong Kong, which tells you everything you need to know about Dave. Anyway, we're here in our virtual Disneyland of talking about Manchester United drawing 2-2 at Nottingham Forest to go through some things, a little bit of news items before we get kicking into the game itself. There's a transfer rumour this morning. United and Tottenham are closely monitoring 23-year-old Jared Branthwaite, the Everton centre-back, who Everton don't want to let go. They value him at £70 million. That rumour was around probably for the last 18 months. And maybe left footer, centre half, United looking for one. Martinez not really reliable in fitness. Never know. A couple of significant birthdays on this day. Dwight York, the most, I would guess, and Gordon Clayton, former goalkeeper, who came up to United with Duncan Edwards, funnily enough, was on the train. Midlands goalkeeper came up with him. And on this day, Man United History Day, that Paul will know all too well, in 1993, United went to Turkey and played Galatasaray. The original Welcome to Hell. There were two, weren't they? I mean, the 94 game as well, we got drawn against them in the group again, but um, the original Welcome to Hell was 1993. And Paul's talked about that on this podcast and elsewhere. It's one of the greatest stories of the early 90s. All right, let's talk about not really hell, but a bit of a confusing game on Saturday. United drew 2-2 with Forest. First off, a bit passive. Big controversy over the award of a corner. Savona looked like he'd run the ball out of play, basically, but replay showed that the whole of the ball. Now, this is where I get funny with this. The whole of the ball had crossed the line. There's no doubt about that. But the sphere of the ball was over the top of the line. The law of the game is it's not out, but the eye test looked like it was out. So all apart from anyone who was a Forest fan or Sean Dyche, of course. Anyway, United scored from the corner. A similar circumstance happened for Forest last week, so you've got to feel a little bit sorry for them. But you don't really feel sorry for them on the strength of the second half performance because they were brilliant. They came out. United were rocking that 5-minute period after half time. Gibbs White scored with a great header. Savona then taking advantage of some poor defending, really mixed up in there to make it 2-1. From then on, United didn't look like they were going to get back into the game. They had chances, don't get me wrong, but I think the Ahmad goal was a really flash out of the blue, really great strike as well. And then from there, I think both teams had chances, didn't they? Both teams had an effort deflected wide. Bruno earlier hit the post as well with an effort from like 30 yards, a bit of a daisy cutter. Ahmad in the last minute injury time gets that effort that's blocked off the line. And it's difficult to know what to make of it because we're getting a point that we were losing, and Ruben Amorim came out and said it's 2 points dropped. I don't know. I look at United over the last couple of years and think we would have probably lost that game. And I'm not saying that I think it's a massive step forward, but I don't think it's as. I mean, I don't think the performance was great, but I'm not as. I think taking everything into account, the fact it's Sean Dyche's first game, Forest had been really poor at home. They were going to get up for this game. It was going to be a different kind of proposition. I don't think it was a terrible result. I don't think it was a great performance, but I think the result was better than performance. Paul, what did you make of it? Because there was a lot to pick through in that game.
Well, virtually sums up really in what you said. If you're talking excuse me, over the last couple of years, to get a point at Forest for me is a good point.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way, sides that have, United, when you look at Forest, in a way, they've kind of fallen off a cliff from where they were last season. So they're quite happy to get a point. I'm sure Sean Dyche is happy to get a point, but 2 points dropped. I still think at the end of it, 4 games unbeaten is still a positive.
Yeah.
At this moment in time, even though you'd normally expect it to be you go 4 games unbeaten, you kind of go, well, yeah, it's Manchester United. But at the moment, they didn't get beat, but there's still a long way to go. The league is, I think we've seen it this weekend. Really, the league is quite mediocre.
Yeah.
When you look at the teams, you look at performances, and you say to yourself, there's only one team that is showing something. I wouldn't say great football, but they're just showing that they've gone out and they've brought physical and mental strength.
Yeah.
And that's what they've got at this moment in time. Not footballing ability. It's mostly there, but they're not allowed to show that. It's everything is about a little bit more robot-like. And it's there for anybody to finish second at this moment in time. And after watching City as well yesterday, you have to turn around and say it's definitely wide open. Besides Arsenal at this moment in time, who's going to finish after them? But with United, there is a possibility, but it's about the manager knowing, finding out what is his best players to play in the way he wants and actually sticking with it for as long as possible, because they're playing no football. There's no football being. There's no reason for him to keep mucking about with the side and worrying about keeping players happy. He's out there to win games of football. If players aren't happy because they're not playing, then maybe they need to go and speak to him about maybe playing somewhere else. But he needs to get continuity instead of keep messing about with things all the time, because the players definitely need it.
What's funny about that is that was the first game of his entire tenure that he named an unchanged side as well. And the difficult thing about that was that we were so good in the first hour against Brighton, and there was nothing of that on Saturday. And you can understand it because, like I said, a lot of change at Forest and a lot of change this season, not just with the recent manager. There's so much turmoil there, and the atmosphere down at the City Ground has been so good since they've been promoted into the Premier League. So they've really got a nice kind of, and that group of players is obviously a together group of players. It's not a group of players you can imagine down in tools. So especially under Dyche, they've got a reason to sort of be more combustible. And they were. I mean, that was the sort of situation facing United at the weekend. So I do look at it and I think, yeah, all right, we just didn't get going. And maybe it's the areas in the team that you sort of suspect there's in midfield, not really getting that blend. Casemiro and Fernandes playing as individuals, like firefighting really as individuals. I think at one point Elliot Anderson decided to just sit on Cunha for a bit and did really well. He did a couple of really good tackles on Cunha. But United, getting out of jail. A couple of good goals as well. We'll talk about the controversy in a moment. But Ahmad's equaliser, Paul. I mean, it's no Paul Parker against Reading, but it's a pretty good strike in its own right.
Oh, it was, and he definitely has. He has that ability, without a shadow of a doubt, to go and do that. So, and he's done it on a few occasions, but this time it went right for him. The only thing of Ahmad is just about finding somewhere that 100% suits him.
Yeah,
I think that's the only thing that's just missing there. He does a great job. I think he does a really good job in that role where he's in. But then when you look at it on the defensive point of view, you do worry.
he was on so sunny on the weekend. I mean, a former right back, you would have been having palpitations about watching him getting roasted all that time.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's really the first time it's been kind of laid bare.
Yeah.
In certain ways. And you do worry about him sometimes maybe being caught a little bit at the far post as well, because he hasn't got a physical presence. I'm no person to whinge about size or anything like that, but it's about showing you've got a physical presence, and he hasn't really got that physical presence, even that bit in his mind to jump at people rather than with them. When you're at a disadvantage when it comes to height, you jump at people. to make sure that if anything, if you do get the ball, well done. But if you don't get the ball, you make sure that he can't head it the way he wants to head it, and he hasn't even got that. He hasn't even got that instinct about him from playing in that role. So, but there's certain ones. I mean, there's so many games you think about the games over the previous 18 months where he's played in that role as a wing back, and he's been he's been the wow factor. He's been the saving grace.
Yeah.
He's the one who's caused problems, and all of a sudden, bits come out, and it's about teams now saying, right, we need to stop this attacking element. Now maybe it's up to him and the manager, if he's going to play him that role, to him to suss it in his head how he's going to play it. You know, that little bit of football intelligence. Football was what they calling it now, IQ or something. They're calling it now.
Yeah. Morning, mate. He says that. Got a comment in. Ahmad needs more support and cover when he's playing right wing back. He's not a defender. No, but what you were saying there, Paul, actually, funny enough, I didn't mention it, but he was cut out for the Gibbs White header. He wasn't strong enough on it. He was the one watching him. No real challenge in there. And I mean, it was a good goal. Yates' cross was clean. The header was clean. But I think when you watch a goal that's as clean as that, you go like, it's that clean and there's no tackling. There's nothing, and there's not enough pressure in there. And I think that was the story of United's start of the second half. Forest was just, I think maybe they were antagonised by the corner situation in the first half. They came out with a cause. Yoro and Delit, I think it was Yoro and Delit, it might be Yoro and Shaw, a bit confused with the ball, crossed in for the second goal. It sort of dropped down. They were clashing, contending with each other, and then it was there for Savona. He was the one who was at the centre of that thing that happened in the first half. We find it a little bit funny, Paul, because Forest had two corners that they shouldn't have got in the game, where the ball sort of ricocheted around. There's been big think pieces as a result of Manchester United getting a goal from this corner. You know, everything about VAR. You know, there's a Forest writer for the Athletic coming out saying, "Oh, it needs to change," and these things weren't there last week when it happened against Bournemouth. But like it's Manchester United, suddenly the rule needs to change. But nothing about the corners that Forest shouldn't have got. I might be saying this because I do think that when we've studied the VAR decisions and the way that they've affected United over the last 4 or 5 years since VAR was introduced, I think we've been fairly balanced. So we've sort of looked at the decision, and we've not looked at it from the point of view of which team it's affecting. It's like, is this a sensible application of it? Or is the human error, in this case, a sensible human error, one that you can understand? I think I think there's an argument to say it looks like it's out. Obviously, now you look back at it and it's obviously in because it's just over the thing. But I mean, I'm saying it's obviously in because it is in, but it's not so obvious on the eye test. In the way that like Sean Dyche comes out and he says, I've got a better view than the linesman, but he's going to campaign that it's still in play because he's the manager of the opposition. Like you couldn't see from the touchline down there. If you were looking at that, it looks like it's crossed the line. You can't say with any real conviction that it's not crossed the line because if you're looking at it on the eye test, you can actually, if you were really being honest about that, any eye test of that knows that it has to go to a second look because the ball is over the line. So this whole idea that the referee's made a massive mistake and killing him for it, I just think is way over the top. It was the wrong decision. Don't get me wrong. The replays have ruled that the corner shouldn't have stood, but that's not what VAR's there for anyway. What do you make of it? Because I just feel like it's a lot of controversy over something that's really quite insignificant.
It's why I don't know when it started from, but this idea now is, again, it's very, football has become fashion orientated, and everyone just follows what everyone does. All of a sudden, everyone, when corners now, they want to go the bare minimum in the quadrant. No one actually puts it in there now. They want to now do it outside. I don't know what everyone thinks the advantage is, but that's what they're doing now. Maybe it's to stop people having comedy moments of kicking the corner flag. I don't know, but it seems a strange one that they're all doing it. So when you see that, and you could just see that bit going over, they've opened. In a way, I'm kind of thinking myself, I would think that's out.
Yeah.
But when it's out, but if you pull it there and you leave it there and you look at it, you'll say it's over the line. So you turn and say it's in, but you don't get that opportunity when the game's on. So the only way they can actually stop this and maybe get some order in it is the fact of VAR have to get involved.
Yeah.
If there's any doubt, that means more time. How much longer is it going to take them to do it? That moment, it doesn't take long, but it'll always take them longer because they'll go back and then look
Yeah.
for offsides and all
Yeah.
that kind of rubbish again. So it might need them to come in on that one to see if we can get the perfect game of football. Something like that. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's about the players. The players are the ones who have got to make it better. That's the most important thing. So I look at it really, and it's a nothing thing made big because of the manager bleating about it, and because Manchester United are involved.
Yeah, and scored from it. That's the thing as well. Like Forest, he should have had more complaint with his own defenders because Forest are good on set pieces, and that's the second time in a week they've sort of. And you wouldn't expect that from a Dyche team as well. Casemiro getting a free header. I know that you commented on the post, and I was watching the US feed of it, and Lee Henry was commentating. I mean, if we're talking about the shorties in the group, there's you, me, and Lee Henry. We're all quite, similar, right? Leandre, and then he says Casemiro is one of the shortest players on the pitch. I'm like, he's 6'1". He's got a really good reputation of scoring with his head. And you it's like as if you've allowed him to sneak in the back post or something.
I mean, when I saw that little bit, that was embarrassing, to be perfectly honest. I mean, you think so. I mean, even if he come out and said words to effect, he's good in both boxes with his heads. If he'd have said something like that, he is. I mean, defensively at the near post, he's absolutely fantastic. And when he only wins his, one part of his game, I never thought I would see a Casemiro. I can't remember him being that strong in the air when he was at Madrid. But then to come out and say he's only, you think of why is he mentioning that for in the first place with Casemiro? And what makes you look at Casemiro and you'll go, he's only short. You look at you go, no, just.
You say
anyway.
Like he's a big bloke. You look at him, you go like he's a unit. I thought you look at that. I thought we could have probably lost that game last year. In fact, we did 3 defeats in a row against Forest, so I don't think that's a terrible result. And you build on that. It's all about really what you consider the momentum of that draw to be. And we'll talk about that going into the Spurs game in a bit. Know that I started reviewing the Spurs game last week, but we'll do it properly this week. T2 says, I thought the main reason for both goals was that we lacked intensity and allowed the crosses to come in the first place. Absolutely. Like I was saying earlier, it was too clean for them in that. They just weren't. I don't know if this is an age-old problem with United. It has seemed to be, and I don't think it's an Amorim problem. And I don't know if it can really say it's this group of players because there's been enough change. I just think sometimes attitudes remain, and I think sometimes United have this thing where certain players, I don't know if Dallo is because he's a player who often gets criticised for this kind of thing. When United are winning, they sort of let it go to the head a little bit, and they don't concentrate as much as they should to grind out to get through the nitty-gritty circumstances of games, and that was one. And Forest knew that we'd be vulnerable, and we, they were right to do that, and United have got to learn from that. That's all right because better teams than United over the last 2 or 3 years have gone to Forest and had difficult results, or played against Forest and had difficult results. So I'm still there looking for signs of progress. So on one of those, I thought, Paul, and I don't know if this is continuity, like playing a part, at least settling on a team that he prefers, even though there's that problem in the middle, is that the formation or the system looks like it's getting a little bit more settled. In the first few months, you're looking and thinking they were the worst thing you can say with any managerial reign, because this is definitely on the manager, because a group of players has been together with the club for a long period of time. And I'm just talking about United. I'm talking everywhere. You get like a group of players that's there, and then the manager comes in, and the worst thing that can be said about them is that they look like strangers on the pitch. But United were like that for periods of the first few months of Amorim's time in charge. I am not seeing that now. I think that that's a sign of progress. I think that you look at that system. I'm not saying it's brilliant. I'm not saying it did anything particularly good on Saturday, and it might have just been a dull. And this might not be a praise thing, but when you saw Van Gaal, for example, and this might be a dangerous example to use in Van Gaal's systems, and he went through a lot. But after they had like 3 or 4 games, the players would look familiar in them. Now they've been dull, but that you know what they were trying to do with it. You know, they effectively get through a game. I'm now sort of seeing what I think I'm expected to see from an Amorim group as much as we can with these group of players, and also within that you look at what's not in there in terms of like the dynamic midfielder that he wants and the sitting midfielder that he wants. So not only do you see what we are trying to do with the players that we've got, you can see how it would be improved with the players that we haven't got. And that's I think that's a step forward. Are you seeing that? Am I seeing something different, Paul, to you? Are you seeing that? Are you saying there's a little bit of progress there and you can see where it would kick on a little bit more?
Yeah. There is an improvement there, but you still know the weaknesses. That's the thing. I know I can see the weaknesses, and I see.
Yeah.
But you look at the reason why it looks better is because of the front three, they've taken massive pressure off the midfield. In that sense, the midfield doesn't look disjointed, doesn't get run through as much because people are wary of the front players because they've got energy, they're willing to run behind, so they're being pulled back a bit by their defenders just to help them a little bit. So that takes a little bit of onus off the midfield, and as well with the back three, it makes it a little bit better for them. With the back three, the goalkeeper makes a massive difference of confidence and belief in what's going to happen next. He needs to sort out what three is going to play, because it's important that those three play together on a regular basis. You play them and you play them. With not so many games to play, no excuse. You play them, they're playing once a week. And you keep playing, you don't keep changing it. It's madness, in my opinion. The goalkeeper and that three should all be together and know each other well. It's the wing backs. That's the bit. When you look at again the focal point of this season so far, this team, Crystal Palace. You look at Munoz, and then you look at the left back, young Tyrick Mitchell, who I watched play. I think I was there for his debut for Palace, and he was just this young Bambi-like looking kid, and he was going around and bouncing off people, but had that control, but not looking like he was controlled. And then he did well under Roy, and he done very well. And you think yourself, you think yourself, they're going to go for more surety. Glasner's come in, and he's put him to wing back now, put him further forwards. You think yourself, this is going to find him out. It's improved him. He's in scoring goals. He's making goals. Every crosses. He's a bit like Juve of West Ham, a bit like Juve for West Ham, or he's a bit like Dogu. Good left foot, good crosser of the ball, does everything early, but you watch him then, boom, 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 never stop, and that's the difference. The wing backs are the ones who really make it. They've just got to be that kind of minimum 6.5 out of 10 every single game, and that's what Palace have got with their wing backs. They've gone and got another wing back as well to give like maybe Tyrick Mitchell a bit of a keep him going a little bit, keep him boiling at the right temperature. So that is the weakness. And I think that is Shilling. I mean, Dalot is a right back in a four. He's not a wing back. He's not athletic enough. He's not easy on the eye when he's running. He's a chugger to play that role. He's not smooth. So that's the weakness. They need something strong and consistent on the left side. On the left side, is Dogu's going out. So he's going. The whole thing is that you can see improvements. Now, what it needs is an opportunity to do something in January, especially the way this league is going as well. You say to yourself, you can tweak it right in January. You can maybe go for the unexpected, because I said from day one when I was asked about United this season, I said top 8. That's what I said, I would say that now, top 8. But you go and you get that right one signing, then you're looking at top 4. And when I talk about Europe, I talk top 4 and maybe top 5. But now when you've got virtually almost a third of a league going into Europe, it's just mad, really. It's not really a competition that anymore, that whole thing. So there you can actually see something materialising at the moment with United and what they're trying to do. But a signing in January and then the right ones at the end of the season, and you've really got something to look at.
Yeah. One point when they were in front on Saturday, United were on the live league table. They were in second. Like 6 weeks ago, they were talking about the manager being sacked and saying he was the worst manager in United history. I'm not saying that they've turned the corner and saying that he's the best since Fergie or anything like that. But it does show you. I think we've talked about this on the last 2 years. The standard of the league is so poor overall. And it's competitive. It's more competitive than it was. If that's, and I think maybe the 115 case against City, their sort of fear to spend money, so blasé, since the accusations came in, has leveled it out a little bit. Obviously, money's no guarantee of success. Chelsea are a great example of that. They've just spent a couple of £1 billion in such a short space of time. But the point being that because City have sort of pulled back a bit, it gave, for example, Liverpool a great opportunity this summer, and Arsenal a great opportunity because they've stockpiled and they're strong on the FFP. They've been able to get into places in the transfer market where City would have probably just gone and obliterated it with, and Newcastle obviously as well would have been all over that if not for the way that those rules have tightened over the last sort of 3 or 4 years. So I think that's made the league more competitive, but I also think the standard's really poor. I mean, you can't go from saying United are the worst team in history at the start of this calendar year to now saying that the Premier League is the best in the world and United are sitting second in it. Both of those things can't be true. They just can't be. And I've said this before, in this kind of argument, you'll probably find United fans are as objective as anyone can be, because there's no one at United, whenever we beat someone, like when we went to Anfield, we're not saying this is the best United team in Premier League history. You know what I mean? We're still saying it's the worst United team in Premier League history. They're still making tiny steps of improvement and they're still getting there. But it's like you said, Paul, one signing transforms this team and puts them in the Champions League because the league is so poor this season. It's like, well, 1 or 2 signings can really elevate United into being, or not championship contenders, but like sitting behind the top 3 teams in the league, which is City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. Like United are like 1 or 2 signings away from being the 4th best team in the league, which is just, it just tells you, it doesn't tell you things about United, it tells you the things about the standard of the league at the moment. So, but it doesn't really matter because football is what it is. It is the moment in which it's played, and that's where United are at the moment. And I think, going back to what we were saying, I do think that the draw wasn't a terrible result at the weekend. Also, I think like everything gets played in this like sort of instantaneous landscape where, for some reason, the lad who needs an haircut he's become the like defining narrative of like, oh, United need to win 5 games in a row, and if they don't do that, that's what progress is. And if they don't do it, United is still rubbish, and the kid still needs an haircut. I don't even know how that's become online media narrative. It's nothing to do with the real world. It's nothing to do with football, but it is part of what people engage in. And I think that people now move it to take him out of it because he's got nothing to do with it. But people now look at it and they go on like a game by game basis. And he's not the cause of this. This was a problem that was there before. All of these games are treated as individual events, which is a problem and a privilege for Ruben Amorim to deal with anyway. It's like we've talked about this so many times on this podcast with you talking about the issues when you walked into the club of having to stand up to that privilege. That's exactly where these players are at this moment in time. The team that you walked into was a better one than this one, but that's where United are. I think they are around the sort of same level of quality as they were when we won the cup in 1990. But even then, you might walk through that team player by player and say, well, that United team is a lot better than this one. Anyway, before we move on to talk about Spurs, I will just give a little bit of a plug for my book. You will have seen Paul's is now everywhere in Manchester. It's in the bookstores. We've got a nice placement in Deansgate. I had a wander through town yesterday and it was there. So, and you've seen Paul on the media appearances and everything like that. So, order his book from Waterstones. And my book's out this week, Manchester United after Munich. Nice shiny thing there. That is available in the bookshops in Manchester as well, and officially published on Thursday. So if you're interested in that period of United after the Munich air disaster, when obviously the turnover of players was so great, and lots of teenagers came in. Their contribution to the club really kind of airbrushed out of history by mass media. But these are players who stepped in when the club really needed it, and their performances, some of them played 100 games, some of them played 50 games, massive shoes to fill, but they kept the club going after the disaster. And I just want to write a story about that because I feel that those players deserve the credit that they don't really get. Okay, so Spurs away. We started previewing this game last week, and since then it's gone even worse for Spurs. They had a very poor game against Chelsea. I follow. I've got some good Spurs mates actually, and they obviously think started really well under Thomas Frank. Paul, the optimism around it was like, all right, well, if Seitz and Frank is the right appointment for anyone who was anyone who was in that position, like a Spurs or a United, if they dismissed the manager or a Newcastle, any team that's looking to move into that next bracket, and Frank hasn't been there yet, but you would have put all that you had on him being the Premier League manager that would move to a club and elevate them with the practices that he had at Brentford, because theoretically it all worked out, and he started really well at Spurs. It looked like he was improving everything that was going wrong, but it's been a step back since then. And the Spurs fans that I know were talking really poorly about their defeat against Chelsea. They were saying it was one of the worst performances that they've ever seen, even though the defeat wasn't massive or anything like that. But they were really alarmed by the performance, and I think there's some genuine concerns about him. Now, having said that, we were talking about it being a good time to go to Forest last week, or whether or not it's a difficult time. And we're kind of saying, well, if you're going to go to Forest at any time, this first game in the Sean Dyche rate is probably the best. Now you're probably looking at Spurs and saying, hope that they don't change manager before, because what can change in a week to really improve anything apart from it being United galvanising the crowd to take them, you know what I mean? But if Chelsea didn't do it, because that's a notoriously like the atmosphere for that game is usually firecracker, and if that didn't rouse them and they're still concerned after that, then I can't see what United are going to do for the team. So I feel like it's a good time to go. What are you making? What's happened? Because you watch a lot of Spurs, so what have you made? What's going on
there? Well, first of all, you have to say, I mean, I like Thomas Frank as a person. He's a nice person. I think he's honest, and I saw him when he first took over at Brentford. His first game was at QPR. I was doing the game at QPR, and I'm trying to think. The previous manager was Dean Smith, wasn't it? I'm sure before him. I think he was there with him, and that game, I thought to myself, he isn't going to last long, and he flips it in the Championship, and you look at the players he's brought through, you see where some of them have moved on, obviously one to United. And when he come into the Premier League, he decided that he was going to get a team full of people who are willing to run, willing to work hard, athletic. And that's what he built. That's what he initially started with at Brentford, and he built on that. And he got players in, and you don't really think of many bad signings at Brentford that he made. He's gone to Spurs, hasn't had much say in what's gone on. He's stuck with players who are, big time, players who not very athletic. He's had to accept some players bought on him. When I compare to those players to what he had at Brentford, he had better players at Brentford, more honest players. He hasn't got a centre forward of his choice. He hasn't really got the midfield playmaker of his choice as well. I think he found out the harsh reality of being the manager of Brentford. So I think he was the manager of Brøndby, Peter Schmeichel's old side in Denmark, where he didn't do well there. It's still a bad taste there with him. And then what happened at the weekend with Spence and Van der Ven blanking him when he's gone to shake their hand. Yeah. The media come out and said, well, kind of saying, well, they were just showing that they weren't happy with the way things were. Sorry, you don't disrespect anyone, let alone your manager. publicly or anything like that by not accept, because if someone had done that to one of them, they'd have been throwing up respect and everything. But they didn't. That sums up, in my opinion, majority of players of today. I would never have done that to a football manager because I'd be worried about the repercussions, because you don't forget anything like that.
Yeah.
So he knows at the end of the day there's a bit of play power, but those two players would be in his head all the time on what they've done, because that was pushed out everywhere. So he knows that's been seen by a lot of people, and he's boiling, most probably, knowing that he can't go and jump on it at this moment, especially as one of them's quite important to the Spurs side in Van der Ven. So hopefully both of them have gone and seen him. But Chelsea were poor. Spurs were disgusting.
Okay.
That's how that game worked.
Okay.
Exactly, because I saw the game. That's how that game worked, and they were absolutely abysmal. No threat going at all. Bergvall, if he had to come off because he got the ball from 5 yards, pumped at him like an Etreset missile, and he tried to stay on. And the doctor worked. The referee was the one who called it. Virtually called him in. They got him, and he was almost fighting on the touchline. Thomas Frank had to go in and just make the decision, get off.
Yeah.
And they had nothing there in midfield. No, and they brought on Xavi Simons. Poor, didn't want the ball. Couldn't. They were poor. But teams lift themselves defensively. They're poor. At one point, I thought Porro was going to allow Garnacho to look a good player, but he got his head together and stopped him and forced Garnacho to come off early, to embarrass him because he was awful. Spence is okay. They've got nothing at all. They didn't create anything of any great note that you can talk about. Spurs fans were going 15 minutes in the end. They were unhappy. It's a game that United can go to White Hart Lane and win, but it's a game where they'll go to White Hart Lane, and it's a big fixture when it's at White Hart Lane. The media grab it and they make it into this big fixture. So United would go there with pressure on them to beat a poor Tottenham. That's the long and short of it, Wayne. I'm actually going to be at the game as well.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to that. So if I'm going to call the game, which is a rarity I'm going to say United have to go there and win.
Yeah.
Even with that performance, yet the performance at the weekend, they still have to go there, and to keep everything going for them, they cannot go there and be beaten by Spurs.
They got a good chance, but their chance is really in what Spurs have been like rather than themselves. And that's not me criticising United. But then I look at it and think United are a funny old team in that they don't play to form book. There's nothing form book about United. There's always something a little bit different about it, and that's my concern. Is this? I can almost disregard what Spurs have done this season because, like I said, it's a big game. The kind of game that can turn things around. But you're quite right, Xavi Simons unbearably poor. It's very concerning for that. I'm not saying if he doesn't strike me as a classic Frank player, but then again, he does strike me as a player who I thought would do well at Spurs. Nice technical player. Nice, the way that he moves with the ball is generally very nice. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, United, what we really want is for Van der Ven to have fallen out with the manager so badly that he doesn't play him at the weekend. But you can't imagine that he's going to be still in the side. And United's flaws are still there, and a manager like Frank, who's had really good performances and results against United in the past, is likely to look at the weaknesses in United's team and still be able to exploit them. Like Forest found it quite easy to get at Ahmad. That's the first time that's really been exploited. The midfield's there to be got at. So even though Spurs haven't been impressive, United's disjointed midfield is so important in terms of dictating the pace of the game that I think you're quite right in what you were saying earlier, that United's main threat in every game they're going to play, which is a good thing, it's definitely an improvement from last season, is the way that they're going to attack and get the ball to the forward players. And I guess sometimes that does necessitate that long ball, and whether or not Spurs can defend against it is going to be the key thing. Whether or not Ahmad and Mbeumo can link up, if Cunha can find a little bit of form, he was out of it against Forest, and whether Šeško can. I thought Šeško was actually all right in the game. He played all right, had a couple of good moments, but obviously he needs to start scoring again. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. One of those kind of games that I know you called it there and said you think United are going to win. I think it's like so earlier in the season that I just don't know. I daren't predict anything with this United team. You get the brilliant and the bizarre, don't you, sometimes? So anyway, that's it. We'll be back next week to talk about it. I don't know if Dave will still be in Disneyland in the Far East. Maybe he'll be doing his tour of Disneyland. There's a few over there, isn't there? He's a big kid, not like me. I can talk, Connor, but he is. Anyway, we miss you, Dave, if you listen and watch this far into the pod. We'll be back next week. Like I said earlier, if you want something to read this week, get on Paul's book, Tackling the Game. It's on Amazon and all good bookstores as well. Yeah, we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and have a great week, guys.